Hello everybody, I'm Grace Kelly, founder of gracefulcoaching.net, and I am delighted to have with me today a woman who touched my heart about 5 or 6 years ago almost now, and I've been searching for this woman ever since. She's been pretty hard to find. She is not like the millennials out there that are jumping online, screaming about their services and screaming about what they've got to offer. And that is in fact what drew me to Mavis Karn. So I want to say a couple of things about Mavis before we bring her on here to speak with us. But essentially what struck me about Mavis was during my apprenticeship with Michael Neal. Michael introduced Mavis to us as a kind of secret, a best kept secret, if you like, someone that he really respected and admired, but someone who was hard to find. And I was really curious because my training up until that point, was you have to market yourself, you have to be on your game, you have to be out there making it happen to get clients. And yet here was this woman who'd been in business for over 40 years without any of that sort of crazy American hustle, as I call it, but we know it's not simply directed to America. So Mavis, unbeknownst to you, I've been searching for you for the last number of years. And we finally got reconnected through Kathy. So I'm so pleased to have you here with us, Mavis. And I know you're probably quite embarrassed by my introduction because you're quite shy, but please say hello to the group. You're so welcome to be with us.
Hello, everybody. I'm right here. I never went anywhere.
Good. And so Mavis, you know, I just want to let the audience know that you are a teacher, counselor, and coach living in the Twin Cities and supporting people. And would you be open to sharing with us, you know, how you got onto that path and really what changed the course of your coaching and counseling direction?
Well, let's see. When I first learned about the principles over 40 years ago now, I was a counselor at a place called the Bridge for Runaway Youth in Minneapolis. And I pretty much did traditional counseling. I diagnosed and took people back into the past and spent a lot of time trying to find out what's wrong with everybody. And I was pretty good at it. But I was getting kind of burned out because I spent so much time talking about what's wrong with everybody. And nobody in any of my graduate or undergraduate classes ever mentioned anything about how to help people be happy. Mm. I don't think happiness was ever mentioned. The whole word was never mentioned. My job was to find out why they were unhappy and to find out what was wrong with them and to diagnose it. And people were relieved. They, oh, that's why I feel so bad. I have this or that or the other thing. I'm depressed or whatever. But it's not long after I would find that out about each person, I would think, well, now what? Now we know why they're unhappy. Now what? And I didn't know anything about the now what. And I didn't know it for myself. I didn't know why I wasn't as continually happy and contented as much as I wanted to be. There's a lot I didn't know. And one day I was offered the chance to go to the University of Minnesota at the graduate school to hear a workshop. I didn't even care what it was about, but the Bridge had a lot of money for continuing education, and 2 days off of work was great as far as I was concerned. So I went, and it turned out it was 3 PhD psychologists that had, from Florida, that had been spending some time with a man named Sid Banks. And I thought, okay, great, big deal. And maybe about 20 minutes into the thing, one of them mentioned something about how it's all our thinking. And I don't think I heard anything after that. I thought the top of my head was going to come off. It was like all of a sudden I saw. It was just like, oh my gosh, everything is our thinking. And I remember coming home and my daughter was there and she asked how it went. And I said, it was the greatest thing I ever heard in my life. And she said, what was it about? And I said, well, it's about our thinking. And I couldn't think of another thing to say. I didn't know how to explain it, but I knew I had heard something that was true. And I was so surprised that I couldn't explain it. And that went on and on and on. It wasn't just a temporary lapse. There weren't any books. There weren't any workshops that I knew of other than the one I'd just been to. And the problem was, I knew I couldn't work the way I was working before. I couldn't do it. And yet I had to go back to work on Monday morning and start working with families. And I didn't know what I was going to do. So I told them that, family after family, I told them that I had learned something over the weekend that made it really kind of impossible for me to work with them the way that I'd worked before. The problem is I didn't know how to tell them what I'd learned. And I told them that I could refer them to really nice people that could keep working with them in a more traditional way, but I couldn't. And for the life of me, I had no idea why nobody took me up on that. And they kept asking me questions and I'd stumble with some kind of answers. And I found out months later, one by one, some of the families told me that they could see something big had happened to me and they wanted that. And I had no idea. I kept thinking, these people, what's the matter with these people? They want to sit with somebody that has no idea what she's talking about. But more and more I got so I could kind of explain it. And my life started changing in ways that were kind of mysterious to me. I would catch myself listening to myself. I would catch myself noticing when I was getting irritated or cranky or ornery or whatever. And then I'd argue with myself about why what I was thinking was actually true and justified and so forth. But yet I was feeling bad. So I knew there was something wrong with that argument. But it was the most confusing but exhilarating time, because I knew I was onto something. And then, long story short, I started going to workshops that Sid put on, and people started writing books and so on and so forth. So I'm still learning. I'm still seeing kind of two different things at the same time: how simple it is, and how the simpler I see it, the deeper I see it. That deep, I used to think deep was complicated. No, the simpler I see it, the deeper I see it, the more I trust. I was thinking just I talked to Grace before you guys all came on and told her how I really appreciated questions. And then I waited for the rest of you to show up, and I thought, why do I like questions so much? And I thought, oh, I know why. Because when people ask a question, I don't go to my brain. I wait for the answer to show up. And I like that, because half the time I learned something I didn't know I knew by somebody asking me a question. And that was interesting to me, because I thought, well, isn't that cool? I didn't used to know that there was a place where you could go for truth instead of just opinion, and that it's inside you. Huh. Who knew? Now that's an app, don't you think? Holy cow, that is something that you don't have. Somebody can ask you a question, you don't have to have it in your personal intellect, because you've never heard it before, and it can't be in your personal intellect, but it doesn't mean you can't know it. Wow, who made that up? I mean, that's awesome.
So what you described there, Mavis, strikes me as kind of hanging out in the unknown.
Yeah, isn't that great? Because the funny thing is, we don't know it. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't. We have no idea how the next minute's going to turn out, ever. Ever. Isn't that nice? We don't have to know. Because it's, I used to believe I had to know how things were going to turn out so I could feel safe. Now, that's pretty strange, because you can't actually know how anything's going to turn out. So if you're going to wait to feel safe till that happens, good luck with that.
Yeah, powerful. So what did you say about worry? You talked earlier about, you saw it was all thinking. You thought the top of your head was going to blow off.
Maybe it did.
What did you say about worry, since today's topic is why worry doesn't work? Can you speak to us a bit about that?
Well, I think it's helpful to know what worry actually is. It's frightening ourselves with our own imagination. It's the misuse of thought. That makes sense? It's like,
yes.
Like my mom, if they handed out medals for worrying, she'd have tremendous amounts of gold medals. She was awesome worrier. There was no subject she couldn't frighten herself about. But it was so innocent. I picked up the habit from her, because I think I thought that worrying was the same as caring. That if you worried a lot, it meant you cared. Worrying and caring have nothing to do with each other. Or people worry because they think it's preventative. Like if you worry about something, it won't happen. It works about as well as a rabbit's foot. It's not efficient. Or they think worrying is being responsible. And really all that is it's one of the ways you're able to respond, but it's not a good one. So worrying is, it's kind of like you got handed down a toolbox, generations old. And it's got all kinds of good tools in there, hammers and nails and screwdrivers and wrenches and stuff. And it's got this one really thick, heavy piece of cast iron that you haven't found any use for yet, but you carry it around. It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't prevent anything. You don't even know why it's in there, but you keep carrying it around and it's heavy. Right? That's worry. It's a big piece of nothing. Sure is popular though. Don't you think?
Yes, just even just on my walk this morning, Mavis, I was so aware of my own personal worries, you know, and I think those listening today might relate to this, you know, this worry that somehow we're getting life wrong. We should be somewhere else by now. We should be someone else by now.
Isn't that funny?
It is now. In the moment, it was painful. How do we get?
Worry is painful.
What do you say?
So we won't do it.
Say that again, Mavis.
I said worry is painful, but it's supposed to be, so we won't do it.
And yet we continue habitually.
That's because we didn't know. It's like the whole idea that we are always feeling or thinking. Always. There is never, ever a moment that you're not feeling or thinking. So have you ever had a really good time worrying?
Not that I know of, no.
But have you ever felt fearful worrying?
Yeah.
So fear is there to let you know that the way you're using free will, you're thinking right now, feels like this, feels like fear. You can do what you want to about that, but you're never going to feel something else when you're worrying. It's like when you touch a hot stove, you're never going to feel something else other than pain. And we usually get it the first time. Don't touch a hot stove. But since we didn't know how we were made, we didn't know the divine engineering that went into us, we didn't know that fear was letting us know how we're using our thinking. That is a really big thing not to know. Really big thing. But it's that.
So you said something profound earlier as well, Mavis. You said worry and caring are not related. And I think a lot of, certainly a lot of what I have heard from clients, from friends, from family too, is that somehow we're not being sympathetic if we're not worrying about the person who's in trouble. What do you have to say to that?
People think the opposite of worry is not caring. But when you quit worrying, you have room for compassion and kindness and guidance if people want it. You can see their innocence. You can see their purity. You can see their potential. You can see who they really are. But when you see that fear is just saying, shh, 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 be still, so you can see through your wisdom and your common sense. Does that make sense? That's where all the compassion is. You don't feel sorry for people then. You see innocence.
I have you in my head sometimes using that.
See, that's where I was. You didn't know where I was. I was in your head.
You're my open app when you say because I just hear that now to quieten down. Who has a question for Mavis on this area of worry? Is any questions coming up? Oh, Diana, I think it is. Hi.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, everyone. So my question to Mavis, thank you so much. This is really thoughtful and insightful. And like, how can we understand that worry, it's not something beneficial for our life, right? But how can we move into not worry what are some basic things that we could start to unleash the worry?
Well, all you really have to do, if you don't want to worry, is that you don't want to worry anymore?
No, it's not good to worry.
This is good. That's step one, thinking it's a bad idea. So how do you think you're going to notice when you are worrying?
Because I'm in my mind rather than in my heart.
And you can feel it?
Yeah, you could feel
All
it.
you have to do is notice.
Mm.
No sermons, no 15 steps to not worrying. Just notice when you are. And if you've decided you don't want to, that's it. Can't be that simple.
Maybe it is that simple, but we are used to this old mechanism that it has to be, in order to be worth it, it has to be hard and it has to be complicated. So maybe it is that simple.
That's not true. You just notice. And if you have already decided you don't want to worry anymore, you don't want to use your mind that way anymore, just notice when you start to. And that's it. Honestly, it's that simple.
Wow. So I have a second part to my question. May I?
Sure.
Okay, so it would be like it goes hand in hand with it. Like, how do you know? Like, I guess what I meant to say, like, one thing that happens to me, I'm always like, I'm always thinking what's coming next. Let's say I'm doing this now, so I'm thinking what's coming next. What's the next thing in my agenda? How could I be, I guess, not having my brain thinking all the time or worrying all the time?
How does that feel when you're always thinking about what's next? How does that feel?
Tiring?
Does it feel kind of urgent?
Yeah.
Just notice.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I know that seems too simple, but you want to see how amazingly we're made. We're never left alone to fend for ourselves. That universal intelligence that went into making us is with us all the time. And so as far as thinking goes, thinking is an awesome gift. It's how we create our whole existence. And if we're misusing it, it feels negative. If we're using it from who we really are, from that deep wisdom and common sense, it feels enlightening and light and loving. Our emotions, all the way from the most wonderful ones to the worst ones, are on our side because they're letting us know the quality of the experience we just created with our thinking in this moment. If we just really get that, then we catch and release. We notice a habit and let go. We notice and let go. We notice and let go. You don't have to analyze it. You don't have to process. You don't even need to know what you were thinking in order to let it go. The clumsiest part of this is entertaining the idea that it's that simple. It's just clumsy though. It's not hard.
I love that, Mavis, when you say our emotions are always on our side, that we don't have an emotion that's not on our side. You know, I think so often we're afraid of our feelings and they get
Funny. You are funny.
Nobody told us. Nobody told us. But you're right. You know, even in that personal worry this morning, as I'm taking a walk, just noticing that I was in worry. For me, I noticed it because I was so serious. The feeling of seriousness about life, about everything around me, everything was so serious. And that for me is the indicator, oh, you're caught up there, Grace.
Yeah.
You know? Just really easy to fall out of it. Yeah. Who else has a question?
Okay. That's not a sin or a crime. I have stupid thoughts coming into my head all the time. That's not the problem. That's no problem at all. It's just I'm a human being and stupid thoughts come into my head. But the problem isn't that they come into my head. The problem is if I didn't know they were just stupid thoughts, because I can feel them.
Yeah. This is the best thing we ever learned. Who else wants to ask a question? Anybody else? Maybe there's something currently worrying for you, or something that looks like the exception. Something you're experiencing that looks like, you know, yeah, well, that's fine, but, you know, I have to worry about this specific thing.
Nobody dares answer that.
Well, tell us a little bit, Mavis, about, you remember that, oh, I see Nita coming on. Okay, yeah. Nita, go ahead.
Yeah. Mavis, this is a question that I've asked myself many, many times, and maybe I shouldn't be worried about it. I'm not really worried, but you mentioned free will, and that whole topic is just something that I'm really curious about, and only because often I can see that the thoughts that come into my head, and just like you said, you know, I can have stupid thoughts, or thoughts just pop into my head, and I'm not making that happen. And so that doesn't feel like there's free will. But then it does feel like I've got free will when I have a thought, and then I think about, well, what do I want to do next? Or, yeah, I don't know if that bit made sense, but it sort of feels like there's free will, and then there isn't free will, and then there is. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
So I guess my question is there really free will? Because it doesn't seem like there's free will when so many thoughts just come into my head that I don't seem to make happen. Like, I can't predict what the next thought might be, or in 5 minutes' time.
I can't either, but it doesn't mean that they don't show up. It's like, for instance, if I said to you, purple cow. Too late, you thought of a purple cow, right?
Yeah.
Nothing you can do about it. Okay? Yeah. But you do get to decide how long you want to ruminate about purple cows. Yes?
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Well, it feels like I do get to decide, and then yet with a worrisome thought, I might think, well, I don't want to keep thinking about this, or this is uncomfortable. And yet I might still be thinking about it 10, 15 minutes later.
Yeah. And see, what if that isn't a problem? What if you don't care about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the biggest difference for me, is that I have some of the same kind of ridiculous thoughts to come into my head. I don't mean all day long, I don't mean that, but they come into my head, and judgment comes into my head, and anger comes into my head, and frustration, and it comes. You know what the difference is between now and before I knew how I was made? I don't care. I just don't care. It's a big deal. You know, let's call the networks. Woman has stupid thoughts. Big project. If I don't, it's kind of like, sometimes I have a hard time going to sleep because I'm busy saving the world up here, right? Now, I used to lay there worrying about going to sleep. What should I do, and what have I done, and how come this and how come that? And the difference now is I don't care. I'm just laying in my nice bed, and I'll catch up at some point. And it usually isn't very long that after that I go to sleep, or I get up and I read a while or something. I just don't care. So it isn't a problem. And it isn't a problem because I don't think it's a problem. I don't make it a problem. I used to be a lot like my mom. I could make a problem out of pretty much anything.
I think I'm actually starting to just see something in this moment, which is that that actually, if I really do sort of feel a sort of sense of, oh, well, I didn't really make that happen, when a thought does come in, I could just keep that same lightness when it comes to a decision, or so what do I do with this? And I think what I tend to do is the opposite. I almost go, oh, now it's kind of in my remit that I can do something, so therefore I better take this really seriously. And I think that's where I trip myself up. So thank you.
Yeah. You think too much about thinking.
Yeah, I think too much about it when I think I'm in control of it, which is what I feel like when I go, oh, I've got free will, so now I better do a really good job with this. And
So you're kind of mean to yourself.
Oh yeah. I guess so.
Well, I would keep doing that if it works for you, but if it doesn't.
No. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lovely, Nita. Thank you, Nita. Anyone else coming on with a question? Feeling the call to ask Mavis anything in any direction? I was having a little think, Mavis, about the time that you said, when you really first came across the truth of this, and you watched yourself testing.
Oh yeah.
If it was true in all areas. Can you?
I thought there were at least a million reasons why it couldn't be true. Well, how about when someone dies? That's not my thinking. And eventually I would always get to the question, well, does everybody feel exactly the same way about someone dying? And I could never say yes to that, because it's not true. Or, well, yeah, but how about when people don't have any money? That's not just your thinking. That makes you miserable. Does everybody feel exactly the same way about not having any money? No. Doesn't mean that most people don't feel worried or negative, and very few people may just say, well, it'll turn out. I'm not going to think about it. It'll turn out. But the point is, if everybody doesn't feel exactly the same way about the same exact situation, then it's got to be something in us that makes the experience different. And that is such good news, that the outside is not in charge of how I experience it. Ever. Ever. It certainly does look like it, though. And I used to be pretty good at proving that the outside did have something to do with what was going on with me inside, because I didn't feel as bad before that outside thing happened. So ergo, it must have been the outside. No, that's false logic.
Yeah. That's powerful. So with what's happening today, Mavis, with what's happening today with just people writing to me and feeling hopeless about the world, feeling that if they don't react to what's happened and to what's happening, especially with regards to what's happened and happening in America, that if they don't react to it or they don't do something, including worry, you know, that nothing will change. What do you see about how we can create lasting change, and just how people experience what's happened differently?
It's going to sound too simple. Is that okay?
We need that.
I am so excited about what's happening in America. I am, you know, I'm in a suburb of Minneapolis where George Floyd was murdered. And I have done work in areas where I've had quite a lot to do with the results of the Minneapolis Police Department. And now in the paper this morning, it said the city council is going to try to just disband the Minneapolis Police Department. Yes, this is great news. And I have wanted that to happen for a long, long time. It's like, I'm just excited that all these young people from every imaginable race and combination of races and combination of neighborhoods and towns and all over our country and all over the world are saying, that's enough. That's enough now of being unkind and coming from the culture of others are bad. That's enough. That's enough. And they keep going on and things are happening. And for the first time for a long time, it feels like this is the revolution of the soul. And what we can do about that is come from our soul. Quit worrying. It doesn't mean you don't care. You quit worrying. You come from who you really are, which is pure potential, which is pure thought. It's love, but it's not personal affection. It's love of the deepest sort. And when we come from that, there's nothing we can't do. And it will come to us if there's something for us to do. But just coming from there is the most important thing you can do. Come from there, no matter where you are and what you're doing. Come from love. Don't worry. Don't come from your impersonal self. Because that's perfect you. Your personal self is just a collection of habits and beliefs and needs and false needs, really, and opinions and desires and all of that, which is nothing. It's nothing. Your impersonal self is part of the perfect whole. And it's who you are, it's who you always were, it's who you always will be. And it's the simplest thing in the world to just be who you are. If every baby can do it, you can do it. Just be who you are. Came into the world knowing it. You just got a lot of false education, just like I did. Just be who you are, because you're the only you. There's nothing to worry about. There is nothing that worry makes better. If you're worried and you feel yourself being fearful, take a deep breath, calm down, and let your next right step show up. Just get out of the way so you can see what's true. It's not hiding. You know, who we really are isn't hiding. We don't have to earn it or work at it or become it. We already are. It's already taken care of. Who you really are includes everything you need. It's all taken care of. I promise. I didn't make that up. That's just the way it is. And you guys all actually know it. Every time I hear somebody say, oh, that makes sense, I go, well, of course it does. You know it. Common sense is a common knowing that everyone is made of. It's not just kind of folklore or witticisms or something you learned. Common sense is what you're made of. It's common, and it's a sense of deep knowing that you can't lose, but you can not know you have it. You can just keep going up into your personal intellect for stuff that isn't there and then wondering where to look for it. It's in you. Be still. There's information in silence.
Oh, that's music to our souls. Mavis really is, in a world that keeps telling us to pay attention and get busy and get active and do something about it. You know, that's really music to our souls. I'm sure some of you ladies have a possible question arising.
Can I say something to you about what you just said?
Sure.
This isn't about me.
Mm-hmm.
If you felt something in your soul,
Mm-hmm.
that's you listening to you. You don't want to follow me.
Mm-hmm.
That's you listening to you. You are made the same way I'm made.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 80. I'm not going to be around that much longer. So if you think it's about me and you're going to be real unhappy when I'm gone because you think you lost something, you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
You have what I have.
Thank you for that reminder.
You're welcome.
How refreshing. Diana, did I see your hand go up again?
I'm sorry that I'm asking so many questions. It's just I felt the call to do it. Mavis, can you speak a little bit more? Were you always like this? How was like the process, like about your path and getting into this work, and how was the transformation experience?
Was I always like what?
Like with the sense of not worrying, like the simplicity of the work.
Well, when I was born, I was just like you.
Mm-hmm.
But I got taught to be afraid. I got taught to feel I was less than.
Mm-hmm.
I got taught to compare myself to others and come out feeling bad. I got taught all kinds of things. But it was incremental and out of my sight. I didn't know it. It was lessons that came on little cat feet. I didn't even know it was happening, just like it happens to everybody else. I did the best I could without knowing the truth. And I didn't do it that bad, but I worried a lot. I felt ashamed a lot. I felt guilty a lot. I felt angry and judgmental and cranky and ornery a lot, just like everybody else. I didn't know how well I was made. I didn't know that was my thinking until I was almost 40. I just didn't know. And it's not anybody's fault, because people taught me the best they knew, and sometimes the best they knew was just god awful. But they didn't know. Who was there to teach me? There's nobody to blame for what I didn't know. I'm just being who I was when I came into the world now. And sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I get cranky and ornery, but I can't tolerate it for very long, because once you really get it, that's just some temporary great thinking. It's real hard to keep at it. Somebody at your door?
My mom came to bring me something.
Oh, Mom.
Okay, so the second part, and I promise this is my last question. I don't want to feel like I'm over asking any question. How is the process for you? Because I know social media is a wonderful tool nowadays for all of us. It gives us the ability to communicate. But how is the process for you and the type of work that you do, and without having social media? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure about the question. Could you?
Okay, so I have observed, right, that you don't have a social media, you don't use any type of social media platform. So how is the process for you not having it versus us?
I'm using it right now. But I'm not on Facebook. I'm just not that chatty. But, you know, people say I'm hard to find, or that I'm some kind of a lone wolf or something. I don't think it's that. I mean, I'm comfortable being alone. I live alone. I'm comfortable with myself. I don't get bored or lonely, or I mean, you'd have to think up being bored or think up being lonely, and why would I want to do that? It's like, but I don't, I just want to do my work. This information is the best information I ever got in my life, bar none. It's just amazing information. And I'm 80 years old, and I get to still pass this on to people that are interested in it. Now, where is the difficulty in that? I mean, that's just, I just love doing my work. I'm not very good at, I don't know what I'm not very good at. I'm not very good at being chatty. But lots of people are, and they make good use of YouTube and all that stuff, and it's fun for them. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a service that you can either use or misuse. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
I'd like to pick up on that a little bit and then come to Kathy. Kathy has her hand up, because Mavis, one of the things that I know my audience are curious about and have been drawn to is the fact that, you know, you have been in business for 40 years plus with this incredible just enjoyment of service. I heard you say again, I just want to do my work. And
I'm gonna put that on my tombstone.
Which part? Yeah, good. So tell us a little bit about, you know, how the path that unfolded for you, you know, because we have all been taught in today's age, if we're not out there showing up, sharing it, doing it right, kind of promoting ourselves, et cetera, then there are no clients available. And yet you really, it's very pressurizing for most people, and especially for those that are.
That's not true.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about your journey with just, you've been in business 40 years plus without all that. What did you see happen? What do you see about it?
Well, it isn't that, let's see, what do I, in some ways I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to do all of that stuff that people think is, but then I've never seen any need for it either. I just, you know, in my business traditionally, people that don't work like I do in my business traditionally, people would refer to each other, that there would be this network of professionals and they would send people to each other. Most of the people that I've ever seen came from clients. The referrals came from clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even know that until somebody asked me to check that out one day, many years ago. So if a client comes and they get something out of it that was helpful, they'll tell somebody else and somebody else, and like that. So my kind of mantra, I just want to do my work, just work for me. I just want to do my work. And that seems to have been enough. Yeah.
And that's what I want people to hear, that is enough, that is what moves us forward. I think that's beautiful. And I think we forget that. I think we forget that piece.
It doesn't mean you don't do things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was just thinking about this because I knew you told me you were going to ask something about that. And so I was thinking about, well, how does that work? But there would be times over the years that I would think of somebody that I had seen and I would wonder how they were doing. It's like their face would come into my head. And sometimes I would just go, oh, I wonder how they're doing, and not do anything about it. And then sometimes I was like, I'm going to call and see how they're doing. And maybe 90% of the time when I would make that call, the person would say, I was just thinking I was going to give you a call. I need a tune-up, right? And so that isn't why I called.
Mm-hmm.
It's never why I called. I was never, the idea of the call was never about drumming up business. I would just wonder about them. And sometimes I'd be moved to call.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what that communication is that you call when somebody says, oh, I was just thinking about you. I don't know what that is, but there are things afoot that we know not of. And so when it would come to me to call, I would just call.
Lovely, lovely.
But that's just,
yeah.
That's not a technique.
Mm-hmm.
The next right step comes to you.
Yeah.
You can trust what you know that isn't necessarily in your brain. Your brain is an organ.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind uses your brain. And you can misuse it or not. But you know way more than what's stored in your brain. And that's not just something you use on holidays or something. It's like, you want to trust how well you're made. Just be still and what you need comes to you. I promise. It's not something that only works for certain kinds of people or certain times or certain circumstance. It's how we are all made. We should be really respectful of that.
Mm-hmm.
Respect the divine engineering that went into you. You're enough.
Kathy, do you have a question that you'd like to ask Mavis?
Just a comment. Mavis is the most confident person I've ever met. She'll tell you that she's maybe quiet, or somebody might use the word shy. That's not the way it is. By confident, I mean Mavis is certain of what she knows, and she stands on her own 2 feet and always speaks truth to power. It doesn't matter who it is, and it's done in a soft but really effective way, like you are seeing today. And the questions about worry are pretty much universal questions, and it might be helpful. I'm thinking of Daihana in particular. In the last short period of time, I made my first trip in 3 months out of my home back down to the cities because of being stay at home at my age with health condition and so on. And there were very frightening things. It was the week that the riots broke out. In the units that I own and live in when I'm in the cities, I literally saw a public health person in full PPE ringing to get into the condo to serve someone that presumably had the virus. And I was trying to figure out how to travel for 4 hours without going in any public rest stops or anything like that. But I think the principles have been so marvelously helpful during this period of time, because when Mavis talks about worry being a waste of time, something we drag around and don't need, when you begin to believe that or have had enough experience in your bones with that, that you know that the answers will come to you without you having to work to have them arise. That's a confidence that I think Mavis's clients have picked up from her. And when an individual that someone knows is in a state of distress, people who are healthy and understand the principles speak about how they learned another way. And when she says her clients referred clients, it's probably the most effective kind of, quote, marketing or advertising there could be, but it's marketing in service to people. And that's all I would say. Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy. That's very helpful. We have a few more minutes left, and I know that there's a couple of questions. So Mavis, are you okay to stay on the line for another bit?
Sure.
Okay. Jamie wants to come on. So Jamie, do you want to unmute? There you go.
Hi, Grace. Hi, Mavis.
Hi.
So I have a yeah, but that I would love your opinion on. So the last 8 years, I've been doing energy healing and psychic work and things like that. And I was trained in intuitive reading. So I'll sit with people and be able, which now I'm seeing I've just since a kid had a strong sense of mind, probably now that I've made sense of it, is I can sit with somebody and get images and senses, and I'll be able to kind of feed back what's going on. But in my non-principles schooling, I have always been told I'm a sensitive being. I pick up on other people's things. I feel a lot of energy. And so since I've been little, it's felt like I had to like protect myself and be out in this big bad world of other people's things, and they were in charge of the way that I felt. I live in LA, so it's like all the energy of the city and it's too much. And I'm around that conversation, but I've been in the principles also for the last 8 years around this conversation. And I see a lot about it, but that's my yeah, but always. It's like, well, I get, and even when you said in the beginning, it's 100% always that we feel our thinking. So am I experiencing, because like I can walk into a room, and I know many human beings are like this, you can feel like or at least I can feel the energy of like, if there's something enlivening going on, or if there's something sad going on or whatever, I just have like a strong sense of it always. So I feel like I'm always being like, and I would love to be like the other day, for example, I could feel my boyfriend's energy and it felt funny to me. And I felt funny that I was just like, is this my thinking about his energy, or am I just like feeling a weird energy emanating from him? So I just, in the psychic energy world, I'm just kind of curious, like, I would love for somebody to tell me that's even, I'm experiencing that through my thinking, to set myself free from, it's almost like that's the area where the world still has control over me and I don't have control over my own peace and my own well-being and my own happiness. So anyway, that's a mouthful, but I would love to hear your take on that, Mavis.
Well, how about if I tell you a thing that I do? As far as having people in my life go, it's like I have this, not real, in my head, I have this little house, and it's got a porch, and a little front yard, and then there's a fence, and there's a sidewalk, and then there's a street. There are people that drive by and I'll wave. And there are people that come up on the sidewalk and I'll go out to the fence and have a chat with them. That's it. And then there are people that I'll invite up on my porch and chat, but that's it. And then there are people that can come into my home. And I know which is which, right? So nobody gets any farther than I want them to.
Mm.
I decide. And it sounds to me like you didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, no one taught me that part was my choice. So it was just like a bombardment of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you are deciding all the time, and I don't think you knew that. But there's something telling you who to wave at, who to chat with, who to.
Yes.
And I think if you knew that you already have that app, you would use it.
Yeah. It is simple. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. That's good.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great question, Jamie. Thanks for that. I want to just ask Mavis a question myself here that I promised would come up also on this call. And in case some of you have to rush off just now, I do want to let you know that Mavis is available via email. So if you want to speak to Mavis, particularly if you want to have a one-to-one session with Mavis or get into a coaching experience with Mavis, you can reach Mavis on mavis.karn, Karn, at AOL.com. So I just want, in case you have to run off now, I just want to let you know that that is available. I personally have incredible conversations with Mavis, and I'm very glad to be experiencing some deep coaching conversations that have really been helping. But Mavis, one thing I promised the audience was that you would talk a little bit about why the zone is portable. Are you open to sharing that a little bit? Because many of the women here are, you know, they're working for themselves, they're working in coaching businesses themselves, and some of them are just sometimes at the mercy of needing to be in a certain mood in order to get things done, or needing to feel a certain way in order to be creative. So I promised that I would ask you about why the zone is portable. Can you share a little for us?
So first of all, you said they feel they need to be in a certain way.
I hear that a lot. I need to be feeling good in order to, you know, create my program, or I'm not in the mood to, you know, get this done. I just can't follow through. That's a lot of what I hear.
What if that's not true? What if they just made that up? It's like, it's really just, again, it's just like, be yourself. It's like, if I have a common feeling about when I'm going to do my work, it's, I can hardly wait to see how this turns out. And sometimes that's on top of, God, I'm really tired. I didn't get enough sleep last night. I can hardly wait to see how this turns out. Or I've got a cold. My eyes are red. My nose is running. I can hardly wait to see how this turns out. Right? Or I don't feel like I know anything today. I'm an idiot. You know, who would want to talk to me? I can hardly wait to see how this turns out. That's all I do. It's like, just because I feel this way, you know, unworthy this minute, in the very next minute, who knows? You don't have to be any way. You just show up, see what happens. Like for today, I didn't have a plan. Once I found out I could get on this thing and it worked, I thought, oh, this is cool. The rest of it's going to be a piece of cake because, you know, personally, you know, I'm reasonably smart, but I'm not a genius. But inside me is everything I need. And you could not shake me on that. You could not tell me anything that would make me go, oh, that's not true. No, that's true. But I also know it's true of everybody. And the more you know that, the more you'll just quit making up reasons why you can't do this and you can't do that, or it's like, it's just making up stuff. Babies are in the zone. Right? And, you know, they're not laying in their cribs thinking, oh man, hope my mom remembers to feed me. Or, God, I'm bald. Look at me. I'm an ugly baby. I'm bald. And what if I can't go to college? Or look at this t-shirt. My God, what were they thinking? It's like, we don't do that, except we start getting taught to do that. We start creating reasons why we're not enough. But none of them are true. Truth doesn't hurt. People are fond of saying it does, but that's because they want people to believe what they're saying when they're in a bad mood. But truth doesn't hurt. Truth is liberating. It's freeing. It's always, and you're made of it. It's like the reason athletes like the zone is because their head is clear and they're not thinking about how to play. They're not worrying about losing. They're just in the moment. I come from a hockey family, and if hockey players aren't in the zone, they're going to get hurt. Their thinking couldn't keep up with how fast they're going. They have to be clear. That's all it is. The zone is it's just being still in this moment, just being who you are. It's not magical. It's not something you have to learn. It's who you are. You're all just exactly who you're supposed to be. And you're enough. Just be still. You're enough. You know, half the time, more than half the time, I have no idea what I'm going to say. But I know that I'll know. I don't have to make myself into somebody that knows something more than somebody else doesn't know. I know what I know I'll know. And lots of times I can hardly wait to hear what I have to say, because sometimes it's something I didn't know I knew. Well, isn't that cool? You can learn something from yourself that you didn't know you knew. There's no ego involved in that. It's just discovering all the apps you have.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mavis. This
You
has
are
been a
so
very
welcome.
this has been a very enlightening call. I've got many people writing in the chat box here to say thank you and just taking down what they've experienced. So really appreciate you were able to be with us today, Mavis, and I'm sure you'll be back with us at another stage. I'll keep everybody posted. If you do want
everybody, don't worry.
That's the key. Not worrying. And if you do want the recording of this, ladies and gents, you can reach out to me personally. Alternatively, you'll be able to find it in my Facebook group, which is www.facebook.com/groups/Grace's group. So feel free to find this interview with Mavis over there. Thanks a lot, Mavis. I think we'll close here. That's been very rich.
Take care.
Lots of love. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.